The Granny from 1995 is a horror comedy that has come onto my radar because it's one of those movies that's stuck on VHS, so to speak. And this is my VHS copy, and it is how I watched it. Currently, at the time that I'm recording this movie is available on YouTube, but you never know when that might get taken down, so get it on tape. This is one of those wacky, slapsticky kind of horror comedies in the tradition of Evil Dead, where Stella Stevens plays an old lady known as the Granny, and Shannon Weary plays Kelly, her caretaker granddaughter, I believe. And they have this extended family that really wants to take advantage of Granny's riches, and they actually plot to kill her so they can get their inheritances quicker. Little do they know that she has drank this potion that's supposed to give her everlasting life, but it becomes tainted and she becomes evil. Now, I've talked about before how when I watch movies on VHS, I tend to give them a little bit of a bump just because of my experience watching them. It's so enjoyable to just sit in front of the big old CRT TV and watch a movie on VHS that I tend to rank them a little bit higher. But I do think this movie was supremely entertaining. It's very funny. There's some stuff that made me cheer. There's some great practical effects, some great action, and of course a little bit of TNA. If you like movies like Evil Dead or Cemetery Man or any of these other like weird horror comedy type movies, I would recommend checking this out on YouTube if it's still there. Antiviral from 2012 is Brendan Cronenberg's first movie, and I am a huge fan, especially of Possessor, but also I did really enjoy Infinity Pool, which my wife and I were able to catch when it was in the theaters. This is my first time watching his first movie, and in a way it does feel like going back to a band's demo tapes after you discover one of their hit albums. That is not to say it is a bad movie, but if you have seen Possessor, there's a sense in which going back to something older is always going to be a step down just because of how good Possessor is. Antiviral is about a future society where celebrity obsession has gone to the point where people will willingly inject themselves with viruses that came from their favorite celebrities. This is one of those concepts where as soon as you see it and think about it a little bit, you can see it happening in real life, which makes it all the more terrifying. Caleb Landry Jones plays a technician for one of these companies who is doing a little work on the side, so to speak, and he really carries this movie. He is so good in this movie that it really sells the concept, and it helps you get over some of the more gross things that happen in this movie because you're on this journey with this great character. Again, I wish I had watched Cronenberg's movies in order because I really like all of them, but this really just made me want to rewatch Possessor, and I can't wait to see what he does next. Over Your Dead Body from 2014 is a very interesting horror movie for me because it's a Takashi Miike movie, and I'm not a massive fan of Takashi Miike. He's one of the most prolific filmmakers of all time, and I haven't seen a ton of his movies. I've seen Audition, which this film bears a few similarities to, but off the top of my head, I can't name many more of his movies that I've seen. So I went into this one with pretty high hopes, but in the end it really wasn't my cup of tea. It's about a group of stage actors working on a production of Yotsuya Kaiden, in which the story of the play and the story of one actor's infidelities start to blend together in a very interesting and sometimes scary way. I did love the way that this movie feels like sometimes you're just watching the play and sometimes you're watching what's going on outside of the play, which really sells the idea of the worlds kind of blurring together in the characters' minds as well. Also, there's some signature Takashi Miike shocking and fucked up stuff that will have you squirming in your seat. But again, I rated this movie a little bit lower than most people. I think if you like Takashi Miike, you'll probably enjoy this more than I did. Maybe I have to try more of his movies, of which, like I said, there are many. So check it out if you're a fan. It just wasn't for me. Plague Town is a low budget folk horror type of movie that really surprised me because I wasn't expecting it to be as gory or disturbing as it ended up being. I got this movie on DVD and I was just expecting a kind of crappy horror movie, but this one really went there and had just the right amount of mean-spirited energy. The movie centers around this kind of dysfunctional American family who is visiting Ireland, and they get lost and miss their bus, and they end up in this village that has kind of a Hills Have Eyes, X-Files Peacock House kind of thing going on. But that's not to simplify it and say they just stumbled into a village full of mutants. There's actually a little bit of lore here that I enjoyed, and some unique characters in some sort of hierarchy that is hard to understand but very satisfying in its mystery. I enjoyed the performances of all the actors in this movie, but I really latched on to Jocelyn DeCrosta, who plays Molly. This was her first movie, and she has not been in many movies, but she plays a kind of quiet goth chick who is struggling with some mental health issues, but she's the one person who can kind of see what's going on a little bit before everybody else. So in a way, she's our audience surrogate. There's also a Ladytron needle drop in this movie. Ladytron is a great group that my wife introduced me to, so they have a special place in my heart. And this made me think it's funny how we can be really bought off when a movie plays one of our favorite songs at the right moment. So overall, I quite enjoyed this one. I have it on DVD and I will keep it in my collection for sure. There are some great practical and CGI gore effects, and some of those really excruciating, tonally dark sequences that we love from horror movies that really make you squirm in your seat or sweat a little bit as you're watching them. And I like that this film delivered those moments. And that'll do it for another video. I appreciate you watching to the end. I appreciate all the new subscribers. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.